Today, what we're going to talk about is how to make a good trouble ticket system. And it's important because your users are what's going to drive change inside of your organization. And if they have a problem, they're going to come to somebody for a ticket. Now, the way that you've probably done it before is, uh, you know, handling tickets as they come in, responding to them via email. And what we're going to talk about is how to make a trouble ticket system that centralizes your trouble tickets, manages your organization's risk, and builds a comprehensive risk register to reduce confusion, to reduce the time to solve a problem, and to identify when problems are systemic or not. Now, if you've read any of my other articles and we talk about site reliability engineering and making systems dependable, what we want to do is make sure that we've quantified and qualified all of the scope of what we're trying to build. So what we see on the screen here is a primary work role ID. And I'm going to zoom into this a little bit more. And that's the one person that you've got doing the things, right? You've got a user, they're going to use a system, and they're going to need an ID to use the system. Think of this as your username. And let's close that bar over here. So think of it when a user submits a ticket that they are going to come from a primary work role ID. So if somebody's in HR, their work role ID should come from an object in Active Directory. And we're going to start building those relationships maps so you can better understand how to take care of their ticket and provide better services. So let's dive into this. Our primary work role ID is going to need a couple things. We need a description about the role. They have an email address. They have a problem, a change, a request, or incident. Now, there's four opportunities here, right? They have a problem with a system. Maybe something's not working. Maybe they're using a new piece of software, so they want to change the configuration in their computing environment. Or maybe they have a request to use something and they don't necessarily have permission to install it or themselves, or they've done something and or something has happened and now there is an incident. This lets you triage your tickets easily, accessibly, and quickly. So with that knowledge, right, we're going to be able to better serve our clients and make sure that they're happier with what we're doing. So once we establish this, we move into establishing um, the relationships, right? So what we see here is when we build this relationship, we see the description is associated with and an email is associated with. And this starts to let you build relationships. And when that primary work role ID comes, you should be able to analyze when a problem has happened related to that. And you should be able to conduct analysis or when a change has happened next to that role. So you can have, again, consistency in your trouble ticket process. So what we want to do is start to build our relationship database. And this was all built very simply using a language called Markdown and then putting this into something called Mermaid. And we'll dive into that another day. So when you've got your primary work role ID, you understand when somebody from accounting submits a trouble ticket and how important it is compared to maybe a senior level executive from your um, department, right? When that work role ID comes, that should come with a higher priority based on the service level agreements and expectations that people have. So when we start to quantify all these components, we get into actually having a flow. So we're going to be able to create that trouble ticket mapping system where a work role ID is connected to the description. And this description is very rich because the description now has relationships to the primary work role ID, the incidents, the responses. So this is the growth of that model. So here we started with just a worker, somebody who is in your IT, and we built upon information that probably is contained about them, how to get in touch with them in a way that's managed by your organization. So we're keeping incidents and issues on internal email, and then it's going to empower them to submit a ticket that defines if it's a problem, change request, or incident. Now, you don't have to have your user make this choice in your ticket system. Just have them start with a description, and that description and email will help your IT team understand, is this a problem, change request, or incident. So if you are diagramming this out, consider when you've got these components that you might just want to start with a ticket that it is a description assigned to that work role ID or that user identity, and that can build the rest of your program. So once we have a user with a clear description of what they're trying to do, right, we can understand again how these components are associated together. Otherwise, we run into this problem where people submit a ticket for one thing in one channel and people submit a ticket for another thing in another channel. And all of a sudden, you've got this bloat and sprawl, because if you use machines to manage your communication, you should be able to create a standard ticket system that manages your risks, because you're going to be able to map these to so many more things. Um, Again, we've got that primary work role ID mapping up here, and then we've got that trouble ticket mapping system. And through that, again, we have, when you get this ticket, right, when a technician gets this ticket, they'll be able to really conduct a much better analysis of how that ticket is impacted based on all of these other conditions inside your organization. And that is the very simple way to start ticketing. I'm hoping that one day people will ask questions in this. Um, So the reason that we need a good trouble ticket system is that organizations use computers to communicate. And when you use a computer to communicate, you have to be able to use them effectively. And what we're going to do is um, we're going to make a new a new diagram right now to convey a little bit more about how awesome it is to have relationship diagrams. So we built from that first ticket, we built out a little bit of a logical flow, and right now we're going to just go ahead and create a whole new level of relationship mapping. And as you see, we started with one simple idea. We went from a primary work role ID. We said, what can we tie to this object, right? We made dependencies, and these dependencies exist. They're tied to that object. We're going through the growth here so people can see what's happening. And here what we've done is given the relationships between the objects. So here we went with ID, and then we identified what we want to do. And now we have an understanding of the contextual relationships. So we see where we have associations. And then here, this lets us start to break these down into multiple groups. So it's a little bit more clear. And now we're going to add some abstract components. So again, we're focused right here on this primary work role ID, but we see a lot of dependencies and interconnectedness. So when we start to examine that, we see that that primary work role ID has a request, and that request is related. So a description involves a request, and that lets you sort of start to plan your logical flow about how you're going to create a trouble ticket system and how you're going to store this information and what you need to be a good technician, and what your IT team needs to provide good quality service. Um, so we see requests have multiple relationships. So again, this description drives your requests, but descriptions are also connected to a couple different things, right? So we're starting with description, we're moving to request, we get to primary work role ID, and we see that primary work role ID is related to emails, right? Emails are related to primary work role IDs, and that also lets us define our change. So when this change is created and approved, we should send a notification to that email that the change was complete. We can also dive into problems and how they're related to that. And then also, if that problem becomes an incident, we can start to engage and understand, what do we need to do? What do we need to understand based on this work role ID and how it's positioned inside our organization. So let's talk about the abstract things we can do. With all of this knowledge, we can securely provision our organization. We can secure our devices, we can secure our networks. We can also move over here, we can start to do analysis. Imagine if when you got a ticket, you had all of this component information, which then when you finish your analysis, you can move to protect and defend. That protect and defend empowers you and your team to secure and reduce the likelihood of cyber attacks, malicious actors. And then when we start that incident, right, we want to be able to analyze and we want to be able to collect and we still want to operate because that's going to let us move into this spot where you are in business because you're operating and maintaining. Malicious cyber actors are trying to stop you from doing this. So having a good trouble ticket system makes it more difficult for them to disrupt your operate and maintain. So what are all the components that we need to consider, right? We probably have an information system owner. And if you're a small business, right, and you're a solopreneur, that one person is you. And if you are also the authorizing official and the chief information officer, we only have to compromise one target to get control of the whole organization. So information system owners are responsible to securely provision, right? They need those knowledge, skills, and abilities. Well, an authorizing official or a information officer probably need oversight and development. So what they're going to be responsible for are those high-level offerings that are in the organization, the policies, the procedures. They need to understand that. And it also, when they don't, is a good chance to hire out. So we can come over here. We have an understanding of what knowledge, skills, and abilities to ask of these people. And then we have other team members who are going to be associated. Now, this is more so for a large scale enterprise than it is a super small enterprise, but it's still worth understanding. You need somebody to assess your controls and they need to know how to analyze, right? Remember, on the first part of this, we saw some words, right? We saw analyze. So where we see analyze, we can say, well, who in this map is part of analyze? And let's just build those relationships right here. Let's just move them over. Um, so now we've got literally a mapping of who's going to be involved. And let's just move these relationships. Wires. Anyway, we should be able to take all of this and pick it up. And that's what our analyze team is going to be doing. Right? We've got all these people that are involved with analysis. And if you have a small team, right, maybe one or two, or a small team of 4 or 5, you might have one or more people wearing multiple hats between threat analyst, application developer, security architect, and security control assessor. So this lets you visualize and understand those high-level objectives. And then coming over to this part, we have some other administrator and other staff for our computer configurations. We've got a systems administrator, a network administrator, and a database administrator. These are totally different and probably not who you would think about in your cybersecurity framework and how you're doing things inside your organization. But let's show you how that they do connect. They all map to the operate and maintain. And we saw that that's sort of at the end of our life cycle. So let's take this group and let's put them into operate and maintain right here. And all of a sudden, we're starting to get a much clearer picture of these relationships. Though it might look visually busy, we do have those wire diagrams that really connect us to who is responsible for what tasks. And you see that this becomes a very in-depth process, and this is why I think people get confused about information and cybersecurity. Just looking at this about trouble tickets. There's a little room right there. So securely provisioned, they're over on the side. And we're just gonna grab this right here and we're gonna put them with that. So all of a sudden we're mapping high level titles to particular tasks that need to happen. Um, and then we've got our oversight and development, right? And we can find that there are sometimes people who are in more than one group, and uh, that might impact how much they know about an organization. Um, so we're just going to put this to our oversight and development because I didn't see. We'll put oversight and development with protect and defend. This sounds like it's pretty much related if we were going to group them into something. So we've got our authorizing officials. They're responsible for how these components go together at your business, and we've made a massive wire diagram from one simple concept, and that was literally starting a trouble ticket. So if you've just joined, right, we are coming from building a trouble ticket with that primary work role ID that is the person that you're trying to support, right? The person in your business is going to submit a ticket, and we're going to use identity access management to leverage all of their ticketing, their support, and do better relationship analysis for our cybersecurity teams to more quickly get back to operations. So that again, that work role ID, we're going to define a couple key components: a description, their email address, and that's going to let you start that ticket from and determine, do they have a problem, a change, a request, or an incident. And once you know that, you can move to this next phase: the relationships between the two. You can start to chart it out. And then on this last one, we've got an entire flow that goes from work role ID all the way to our security controls assessor. How are those relationships connected? We follow those maps. We see that analysis involves this group of people. And when we look here, right, we've got people in our um, analysis group that are different than our operate and maintain. Systems administrator, network, database administrator, they are operating and maintaining, but they might be able to help with the analysis. So if you were trying to solve a problem and you were troubleshooting a ticket and trying to figure out what dependencies exist inside the organization, you might say, hey, application developer, why don't you talk to the network administrator or database administrator to help you analyze this problem? And we can analyze the problem by examining the description of the problem and where it came from. How did that request get submitted? What information was there? And where are we going to analyze? If you look at this flow chart, we also have a couple spots that we switch to analyze. We see analyze in the top part after a change happens, and change, analyzing, impacting, operate, and maintain. But we also see that a request requires analysis, impacts, collect, and operate, and then operate and maintain. So when you have high level systems, you need to think about how the whole organization is interconnected and where those teams can work together, right? If you've got people working in more than one domain, it changes your thought process, right? The way that a network administrator would analyze a ticket is going to be a lot different than a security control assessor or an information system owner. So there's also that you know that sometimes it's a good idea to connect your information system owners with the people in the analysis, right? Because they might be able to help answer some questions about application development or threat analysis or security architect. Um, the size of these circles doesn't is irrelevant. The size of the circle doesn't mean that one team is more or less effective or important than the other. They're just relationship diagrams that exist. Um, we've got 10 more minutes. So what we'll do for the next 10 minutes is we're going to learn how to literally just make make a flow like this. And let me get my space ready, and we'll get started. And you're going to learn how to type some words into a screen and take those words and make them do something for you. So let's change where we're sharing, and we're going to share are, let's see, that's not what I want to do. I'm working on getting, that's not what I want to share. But now everybody has seen the applications folder. Huzzah. All right, there's not a way to share the particular thing that I want to share in this environment, which is okay. Not the end of the world. And so, what we'll talk about is if you don't have a change control process in existence for your business, you're going to you're going to suffer a lot of difficulties. Your teams are going to suffer from burnout. They're going to become exhausted because they won't have the resources to tackle the problems that can be more simply done leveraging computer systems to provide contextual awareness, right? If you've already created user groups, there's no reason why you can't create a ticket system that is tied to your identity access management to really deliver better ticketing, right? Because there's a different priority of a ticket that comes from a technician who can't get to their email or your production environment that has gone down because of a critical error. Now, that same person could be submitting the ticket, right? They could be a junior technician, they could be from help desk, they could be sending the ticket. So it's important that we understand how to manage the relationships, how to manage the descriptions to more effectively create a log. And then we want to monitor those logs, preferably with a computer to perform analysis on the logs. And at some point, we need to generate an actionable alert that lets somebody take action based on what has happened and then bring all of that information together. We're going to read a brief message. Today's Risk Ruckus has been sponsored by Login Business Internet. They offer business internet, VoIP phones, and data center services. Login, where service matters. If you'd like to be part of a live Risk Ruckus presentation, feel free to stop by at the Login HQ at 1855 North 6th Avenue, Tucson, Arizona, 85705. Next Thursday at 4 p.m., doors open at 3:45. Login Business, where secure service matters. Thanks for coming to Risk Ruckus, and we'll see you next week.